people.
Yo.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Dice Jailers. I'm Jordan,
Doing.
and this week we're going to talk about some of our favorite things that we've created as dungeon masters, more in depth, so maybe you can use them for yourselves. But first, as always, how you been, bud?
I've been good and busy. Working in healthcare, working in a clinic right now. We're about to start seeing patients in person again. So everyone had to get COVID tests. So even though I was sure mine was going to come back negative, there was still that few days of stress from when I took the test. When it came back, I'm like, well, maybe. And I mean, I haven't been feeling great. I've been a little tired, but then I don't sleep enough. So that could
Right.
be anything. So yeah, got the results this morning. I'm fine. So I was able to go into the clinic today, do a little work from there, get the lay of the land, and yeah, it's really really cool place. All the art that we have in there, all created by women. Particularly, there's a lot of East African art there
Mm.
from a group that our CEO got a chance to work with and study with for a while, and they gifted her some art, and it is very special to her now.
Word.
Yeah,
That's super dope.
it's gonna be pretty cool. And then the usual stuff, working my butt off on the campaign you play in. finding that I wish there was a fifth edition manual of the planes. I'm kind of glad there isn't, only because I found the fourth edition and the third edition both online in PDF form.
Hmm.
Third has more info than the fourth.
Oh yeah,
So I've just been using the third edition manual of the planes for any interplanar stuff I've been running.
yeah. Which that's definitely a good idea because just in general, stuff from fourth edition, it's disappointing if you compare it to any other edition.
Disappointing if you compare it to a soggy boot. Like,
Yeah.
and I don't like fourth edition at all.
Yeah.
Too much math.
It's
But
just not
yeah,
great.
like I'm actually kind of appreciating that WotC has focused a lot on adventures and just true source books as opposed to reiterating things like the Manual of the Planes.
Hmm.
Because seeing the DM guide, the Monster Manual, and the third edition Manual of the Planes, I can create interplanar adventures without any other stuff.
Yeah.
I don't need the fifth edition one because all the stuff's the same name.
Yeah, and that leaves it open for other people, like other DMs, to actually tailor the
Right.
planes to their games instead of just like, oh, well, this is what it says, so I guess it's here. All right.
What have you been up to?
I don't know why this hand motion is that, but now that's a thing.
That's good. I like it.
Uh,
Man.
my brain's on empty, bud.
Yeah. So what's been up? What have you been doing? What's good?
It's been quite a week. I'm working on practicing up a dialect that I'm not super familiar with for my friend's podcast.
Yep.
Ugly Radio. My buddy Andrew Shanks puts it together. It's super dope. It's jam packed with a bunch of different Seattle talent. So if you like listening to Seattle artists' voices, Ugly Radio, check it out. And because I've been on it one other time. God, I think it was episode 3 or 4. I don't remember on the top of my head. Because he's my neighbor, so I just kind of it's very quick and I forget
No,
when things happen. But like so doing that also heavy anxiety because a roommate of mine is also a healthcare worker, and it turns out they might have been exposed, which means the whole house might have been exposed, which means gah,
yeah, good times.
as yeah, as well as a second batch of construction on my corner has happened. So there's just there's nothing safe. There's nowhere safe from just the noise.
No stress, no escaping the noise. Welcome to 2020.
Mm-hmm. And on top of that, because there's more, uh,
Because there's
on,
always
on top of that, my own D&D games that I'm running that are being fun and coming, and a couple of them are coming to a few heads, so that'll be really fun to get them finally, like, this big wrap-up conclusion for a story arc, but that also takes a lot of writing. Add on to that, recording a bunch of auditions, and add on to that, uh, the the abandoned house next door to mine caught on fire last night.
oh good.
Yeah, uh, yeah. So that was exciting. Uh, like there was a person inside.
Oh no.
Um, and like my roommates before the fire department was able to get in and help. We were like tearing grates off of the window next to where he was to try and help them be able to get in there to him faster. It was a lot, and that was during my D&D game. So my party, I just like I hear some yelling. I bolt out of my room, and my party is just left here on the computer. Like, okay, so he just ran away. Um,
The DM's gone.
oh no, I was just playing this week
Oh
rather than DMing, which is good. That would have been way worse if I was DMing and just bolted.
yeah.
But
You're like, what do we do now, guys?
yeah, so I came back like a half hour, 45 minutes later, and like obviously they didn't just wait and stop the narrative because that would be disrespecting everyone else's time. Uh, but I come back and they're like, "Hey, so why'd you run off?" "Oh, there was a fire."
You.
Yeah. It's been a lot of a week and well 2 weeks because we didn't have last week because we all were spending Thanksgiving with our chosen family over video or with our COVID bubble, however small, or just by ourselves. Uh, doing whatever you can to do things safely. Uh,
I have to say, from last Thursday, three beautiful words: garlic mashed potatoes.
yep.
Amazing.
Uh,
They were
yep.
amazing.
Mashed potatoes are the most important part of Thanksgiving this side of the mac and cheese.
I had never heard of the mac and cheese before you had mentioned it to me for the first time last year. And while I still never experienced Thanksgiving mac and cheese, I am fully on board this train. I believe in this because
Oh
I
yeah,
love mac and cheese.
mac and cheese, especially with the like time and care and effort that people generally put into like Thanksgiving meal
Yeah,
stuff.
obviously we're talking like starting with a good bechamel here. We're not talking no blue box. I mean,
Oh yeah.
I'm not hating on the blue box. That stuff has its time and its place.
Well, yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like, shout out to the blue box. That's like I have a Costco size pack of it under there. Uh, like shout out to the blue box. But when you like have the time to actually like make a roux, make a bechamel, like make a proper cheese sauce, bake it, do like the breadcrumbs on top to get that little top crusty like with
Uh,
some extra spices up in that. It's on point. And then, you know, you get murdered if you put raisins in it.
okay, now I'm a person who likes raisins. Even I wouldn't put raisins in mac and cheese. What I was about to say is you don't put peas in it, do you? Because
Oh, absolutely not.
that's when I get mad at mac and cheese people. Is
No.
the mac and cheese and it looks great. It's got that crispy crust right on top.
Mhm.
You take a bite, you find pretty peas in it.
Yeah. There are a few vegetables that like could go well in mac and cheese. Peas are not one of them.
Pork. That's the vegetable I like in mac and cheese. Pork. That's a good
To
vegetable.
quote many other black men and the Boondocks,
Mhm.
vegetables cooked with pork still count as pork.
I'm not going to disagree with that. I
It's
will
no
not.
longer it's no longer a vegetable if you bacon wrap it. Even if you take the bacon off before you eat it, it is no longer a vegetable.
That's fact. That's
You
fact.
cannot count it.
Your method is telling somebody that you cook a vegetable in a way it's like, oh, you'll like it. I cook it with bacon. You're cheating.
Yeah,
No.
it's not a vegetable anymore. It's not.
They don't like your vegetable. They don't like your Brussels sprouts. This is coming from a man who recently learned he likes Brussels sprouts. As long as they're roasted in the oven, you get a little char on them. Gotta have char or any of
Oh yeah,
that. But if you cook it with bacon, you cheated. It's a bacon product. It's no longer a vegetable.
absolutely. Uh,
And that's what you came to a D&D show to listen to was us talk about vegetables.
I mean, like it's a thing that I don't do often. Partly because I live with a lot of people and
Sure.
I don't want to take up all of everybody's space, but also just time and effort. I love to cook. I just don't do it very often. Uh, and so I could talk about cooking forever in a day.
No,
Uh,
I'm with you. If we ever wanted to just do a show where we just talk about some of our favorite stuff to cook, I'd be all about it. I
I
love cooking.
mean,
Cook every day.
is that is that another channel for us once we can get together? It's just us like doing a cooking show of two non-chefs trying to make like D&D themed dishes.
They just released that new book, Heroes Feast. That's book of
Yeah.
themed recipes. I mean,
Uh
when we get out of like when we're able to actually gather again,
we could just do a show of us like cooking through that book.
yeah, I want to be more on the eating end. We'll cook beforehand.
I mean, okay, I'll cook it.
We'll figure it out. We got time.
Cuz it's also with all of quarantine I've been watching just about every cooking show that's on YouTube and on Hulu and on Netflix. So, I kind of want to do a cooking show now. But that's not what the show is about. Creating food is not what this episode is about. Creating D&D things is what this episode is about. And
And
as two longtime DMs, we've got a lot of things that we've made. Uh,
there's the DM's guide lets you know that the overall rules are merely guidelines. Uh, to paraphrase Barbosa from Pirates of the Caribbean, but it's an important thing to remember, and every magic item that's in there is just guidelines, as
Hmm.
well as every item can be exactly that. You don't have to follow what the DM's guide says, chapter and verse, and
Hmm.
more, you find ways to create things that enhance your own campaign, your own story. For
Hmm.
me, it started with just tweaking some things uh,
Right.
a little bit. A quick example I'll give: in our campaign, your character found these scabbards that
Yes.
to the swords he had been carrying with them, because we had talked and you decided that for your weaponry you wanted to wield twin longswords for the story of the campaign,
Hmm.
which I'm super down with characters that have a signature weapon. And I think it's important as a DM, find out from your players, do you have a signature weapon or are you going to use kind of whatever you find?
Right.
I
Like
think
Takar, who was proficient in every weapon.
exactly. Like my barbarian, he can use all weapons,
Just
but
everything.
he prefers the great axe. Like if I can, I want to wield a two-handed axe. So knowing that you wanted these two swords, I knew not to introduce like flaming warhammers or mystical axes, things like
Hmm.
that, because they wouldn't suit your character personality-wise. Because I think aesthetics are important in a
Hmm.
character. Um, like think about the Ninja Turtles. Like,
Oh,
could you
yeah.
imagine for a moment Michelangelo using anything but nunchucks?
No, absolutely not.
Look right. So it's the same thing for a D&D character. It can be this is their signature weapon. So instead of giving your character specific magic weapons, granted it had the effects of a frost brand and a flame tongue,
Right.
came from the scabbards, which allowed me to mold them as things went on. And now you have what is it? A defender and a
It's,
sword of entering.
yeah,
Only takes one attunement slot now because that's the homebrew on it as far as how it works for your character. And that's the most minor of things you can create,
hmm,
but that's in remembering the idea of the story being guidelines is going, oh, I can have these swords grow. I can use stuff right out of the DM's guide, which honestly I only do for the sake of how easy it is on D&D Beyond. I'm only
absolutely.
learning how to homebrew my own stuff on there, which as I learn it, I'll tell you now, my next campaign is going to be chock full of my own created magic items because when I get the opportunity, I'm going to make some magic.
God, it's so close. We weren't close. It's only 15 minutes in.
How
We've got to. We're just gonna have to keep a counter now of like how long into the episode it takes for you to get one of those in.
it's so stupid, but I'm always going to do it.
Yeah, absolutely, and
I'll
I.
just, very brief sidebar. I had somebody ask me, they pointed out, they go, you don't do that very well, right? I go, "Sure. If I did it
No,
well, I
someone
wouldn't
did.
do it. Like, if I did it well, I wouldn't bother doing it. Like, I know
Uh,
people do that trick real well, and it actually looks pretty good. Not me, and I don't
no,
want to get
no.
better.
The joke works much better, just because of the pure audacity to do it badly.
But I
Uh,
know when we came up with this idea of stuff we've created, I want to kick it over to you for a bit.
okay.
You have some
Yeah,
stuff.
because I've got some big things that I've created because I've most of the games that I've DM'd, which one is a mistake for an early DM, but almost all of them I have created my own worlds, and I'm big on like creating atmosphere of those worlds, so like things that are happening in the world outside of that. I also watch a lot of anime, so all of my feelings with a story that I can create that seems kind of episodic, kind of clip showy. Uh, you have a story arc that ends up, and then you have a little something that happens in the in between time of that last arc and the new one.
Right.
That little bit of fluff filler that's just kind of fun that lets you get at the characters' personalities more than when they're like hacking through things in a dungeon. They can't really talk about their dead parents that easily. I mean, everyone's character will.
I've met players who can, and it can
Yeah.
be tough, but
And so I love the idea of things that are still challenging for a character to do that aren't life or death.
that,
And so I've created whole things around different festivals. Because like you have a harvest festival, and thinking about like what I've read on like on medieval culture as well as on just different cultures around the world is how differently their harvest festivals are and how dope usually the harvest festivals are. So I decided, fuck it, I'm gonna create festival stuff for D&D. And so we've got simple things like arm wrestling. We've got simple things like fucking test your strength, hit the bell, which is
right.
just a pure strength check. And also, I like to use the festivals as big, like, because like it is the filler between arcs, but it's also a little bit of here's some extra items if you can earn them.
Sure.
Because like the city will, you'll have some big main city that'll put on this big festival, and you have like city events that the entire town would come to and like take part in. And so you have your archery competitions, which are simple, just bracketed rounds of roll offs with a particular regular longbow. So it's at that point, it's just your proficiency and your dexterity. And then we have the bullseye at different ACs depending on what your character's levels are at. I mean, obviously a nat 20 is an instant bullseye,
Yeah.
and then a nat 20 after someone else hit a bullseye is the instant Robin Hood. But like, and you can change up the rings however you want. But I usually, when I do it, I usually set 3 rings and then a bullseye at different ACs. And that can get you through just tournament style rounds, and then you as a DM can have fun with the narration with your NPCs. And you can also grab up all of those hundreds of NPCs that you've made and then bring them in just to give them a little something to give it more life. And then
Fine.
also you can bring those NPCs back later for some nonsense in the story.
You can also finally find a use for those NPCs you created but still haven't gotten to use, and they're right at the top of your list. You're
Mm-hmm.
dying for them to come out. It's a great way to do it. Like you're saying, 'cause at a festival, you can't find a culture that exists that didn't have festivals.
Exactly.
Like people gather, people celebrate. Like you said, harvest being very common.
Mm-hmm.
Also, both of the solstices,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
super common things to celebrate your longest and shortest day.
And also you can just make a random festival whenever by
Yeah,
inserting some lore of this is something amazingly heroic this person did, and then making your festival on that. uh Also, one of my personal favorite games that I have for the festival is an obstacle course foot race, because you get to insert the way that I do it, you get to insert a lot of magic and spectacle into your world. So,
magic.
God, yep, that's 2 for today. All right.
Welcome.
But the way that I do it, I straight up have 4 things in mind, and the players, I do this whole game of like narrating how the players reach their hand into a bag and pull out a chip, and 1 to 4, those chips are going to be either grassland, forest, water, or desert.
Mhm.
And so then I'll have some town mages do shape terrain or illusory terrain, the spell. Um, and then it's a dexterity and a constitution contest, or an athletics or an acrobatics contest between those environments. And so you have like in the forest environment, you have climbing up a tree, jumping from tree to tree, to whatever you want to set for how many rolls wins your distance. But what I do is that I pick like the associated set of skills, and they have like 2 or 3 roles in each environment, and it's just whoever wins the majority of those roles wins the race.
Now, when you create a lot of these, because you'll have your players sometimes competing against each other as
Mm-hmm.
well as your NPCs, and I think games like that in a festival setting are really cool to have because, well, as you know, myself as a DM, I don't allow PvP. Like
Right.
I just don't allow PvP combat. If you want to play that game, play under a different DM. I don't think it's fun. I only think it leads to frustration and hurt feelings. I think it's the only
Absolutely.
thing you can get. However, a lot of us have that competitive streak in us. So if you can compete with someone else in your party in a way that there's no risk of lethality, there's no we're attacking each other, you're still competing. I think stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that's great. What I want to ask is when you're creating it, you mentioned like the different terrains. Do you try and do it in a way that certain PCs will have advantages or disadvantages in certain ones, or is it
Mm-hmm.
do you try and have a little more randomness of like you wouldn't know what's in an obstacle course when you signed up for this, so the chips fall where they may. Like, what way do you prefer to do it?
Usually with specifically the foot race stuff that I've built and the obstacle course stuff that I've built, I tend to let that be more random. I mean, it's still going to generally benefit the characters that are high dex because most of the terrains are going to be like the water and the forest terrains are going to be like their platforms to jump from, uh and then like the grassland one is just a straight up constitution run, and
Sure.
then the desert is actually the strength and constitution one,
Yep.
because running through the sand takes strength.
Yes, it does.
uh, and
Well,
so I let that be more random, but I'll
okay.
also like tailor other bigger events in the festival to be like there's at least one that each character is going to be kind of good at.
Sure. Like if you have a barbarian in the party, you're probably going to have arm wrestling or the
Mm-hmm.
hammers or something there.
or
So
or
there's a way they can
or
shine.
a cleric presided over battle royale.
There you go. Those are
Like
those
those
are
are
fun.
those are great. Like it's the way to get that like player versus player PvP itch without there being a whole lot of chance for like hurt feelings and grump, because someone
Yeah.
no one's if it's a sanctioned event that no one's going to die.
Exactly. Like you're not risking your player. So what I was curious, so you're talking about like you like to have Dex be kind of one of the things at the forefront, going through all the natural terrain. Is this your opportunity for Rangers to finally be good at something?
How dare you? That's the archery competition for one, and two, how dare you?
You're welcome. I haven't made a joke. No, actually, I no. That's probably one of my last Ranger jokes I'm going to make because now that they have the revised Beastmaster in Tasha's, Rangers are all around viable option. I only ever made fun of them because of how bad the Beastmaster
Oh
was.
god, the Beastmaster was awful.
It was
Just
unplayable.
awful.
It's unplayable. But I mean, the Monster Hunter, the Slayer,
Mm.
or if you want to talk about the Horizon Walker or the friggin' Gloomstalker, those
Yo, the
Gloomstalkers.
Gloomstalker's a beast.
If you are a DM running a campaign that's going to feature heavily in Underdark, and one of your players decides to play a Gloomstalker Ranger, good luck because they may have just beaten your whole campaign at level 3.
Oh
Because
yeah,
Gloomstalkers
easily.
are awesome.
Yeah. Oh my god. Oh my god. Gloomstalkers are amazing. Uh
Though, if I were a DM running a campaign where someone played a Gloomstalker, I would definitely make sure that a Mind Flayer colony was somewhere as part of that arc.
oh
Because
yeah.
think about how much that character could shine in that environment. And that's kind of where I wanted to go briefly as far as some of the stuff I create.
Mhm.
I know where a lot of the creations are going to happen until I see the kind of characters my players are playing. And I don't just mean that in build, like I mean
Right.
that in personality. Um, for our campaign, we have a goblin monk in the campaign who's all about fighting and combat. This is a guy who over the course of this has now sworn himself to Cord, the
Mhm.
Stormlord. He's fought against Cord, in person
Mm-hmm.
more than once, and it's been a really cool journey for that character. But a lot of these um, individuals and opportunities they have to fight, they were things that I created to give him a chance to shine and a chance to have fun. And that's what I find like I find create I create some of those things. And the other things I like to create are my opportunities to fill gaps in narrative.
Yes.
If because I use obviously the core D&D rule books, but because we're playing in the world of in the continent of Taldore and the world of Exandria, created by Matt Mercer, Critical Role, there's so much I can glean from the show,
Mm-hmm.
from the books, but there are also some really nice gaps in there. And I've really come to enjoy those of getting to fill them myself. So it's been to me kind of funny that where you guys are playing is time wise where his campaign 2 is happening. And I
Mm-hmm.
told you guys the Mighty Nine, you won't
Right.
ever run into them around the same time. And there have been multiple things that have come up in his campaign that has come up either in our campaign or I'm looking at my notes and I'm going, I have that planned. Like the Mighty Nine just went to Isocross, the lost city of Aor.
Oh my
You
god,
guys
and you've
just
had
found
that in our campaign for so long.
like months. Like ever since the Explorer's Guide to Wildmount came out, I found the section on Isocross, and I went, yeah, okay, this is where this character is going to be holed up. And so you guys just recently found out your characters don't know where it is yet, but that the Necromancer is holed up in the Lost City of Aor, in Isocross. This is where you'll end up going. If you know the lore, if you know the show, you know
Mm-hmm.
that. So when that happened on Critical Role, I was going, "Oh, that's so cool that we're in the same spot." But that whole thing about the lost city of Aor, I got excited because it was like, "Oh man, here's a creator giving me a morsel of something, just letting
Mm-hmm.
me know it was a floating city. It was destroyed centuries ago,
It
and
fell.
we don't yeah, and that just gives me so much to work with. Like I can go to the Eberron book and I can look at stuff of the City of Towers, Sharn, because I forgot about Sharn, and
Right.
it just gives me a lot to work with. And so I get excited whenever a creator has left gaps for someone else to fill in because we all get to fill it in differently.
Yeah. And that's the thing about like at making things as a DM in general is you start to figure out like things that you can use and like have happen that your players can take on to their other games later. Like
Yeah,
that's part of a thing that I think about now when I'm building stuff is just like is like how can I make sure that when my players find this kind of thing that they end up being able to reuse it. Like there's one thing that I have created that I'm very proud of that's like if you ever have a guild system that like you set up a thing and this again goes a little to my anime and my JRPG love, but um setting up like a guild that has tiers to like your ranking in the guild and they won't let you go on certain difficult missions because you're not a high enough rank, you will die and we're not going to send you to your death. And doing different trials to like be able to rank up faster. And one of the trials that I really want to talk about, but I'm currently using it in a game, and I know that my players watch our stream, so I can't talk about all of the things on it.
put a pin in
Um,
it. We'll come back to it. We'll get back to it
but
at some point.
I can
I'd
tell
love to
I
hear
can
once you guys get there and you're able to share.
I mean I can do the explanation of the setup,
Sure.
and that's you have in a city, you have a chest that's hidden somewhere in the city, and inside of it, it's a little piece of paper that says, "Congratulations, you've passed your test." And the whole test is that they've got to find it, open it up, and bring that piece of paper, that signed piece of paper, to the guild. Now, the
Okay.
thing with the wrinkles that are in that is that it's a locked chest, it's hidden somewhere in the city. and they also know the names of their adjudicators. One of however many you want to place. I used three because the rule of threes.
Good.
One of them has a key to the chest, so that gives the players a lot of ways to go about doing that. Like, do they try and figure out who the adjudicators are by asking questions about who's new in town? Do they try and track just for suspicious activity? Do
Sure.
they, after they figure out who the adjudicators are, do they just straight up go like, "Hey, fight me"? Or do they try and sneak and try and pickpocket the adjudicators? Or do they just search around the city for random chests and try and open them without even getting the key? Or do you go further than that and they pick a name of one of the adjudicators and try to forge the certificate?
That's fun.
Yeah. Like there are so many options, which also DMs maybe don't use this if you have something that's like time pressing for your story to
Yeah.
happen, because this many options will make your party take 5 years to decide what they're going to do and how they're going to pass this test. Which is why I still can't talk about all of the different things that I do within it, because this party, as much as I love all of them, they have taken long enough that I had to set a festival as the like time limit to give them a sense of urgency.
So, senses of urgencies are an important thing to set.
Mm.
Talking about creative stuff, I have to tip my cap to you for something you created for a brief time when I played in a series of games with you. This is one of my favorite things I've ever seen a DM create. And what you did was because our group was so big and had inconsistent schedules, because you wanted to run it, you had this like magical device that was given to us by the first person who sent us on a quest,
Mm-hmm.
and basically people could like teleport in and out of it via touch, and all they had to do was set it on the ground. And what it allowed for was for a continuous story to progress while characters just bamped in and out of it, basically being like, oh, these people who could be there that week, cool, they're the ones
Mm-hmm.
who pop out of it, and we keep going. And it allowed you to keep continuing telling something, but you were able to have a larger group. Now,
Yeah. Wow, I'd
you're
forgotten about that thing, honestly.
yeah, but I thought that was a really cool device because, well, let's face it, the number one thing that kills campaigns is scheduling.
Absolutely.
Nothing kills one more. Like, I'm eternally grateful that I've had 5 players that have worked so hard to give me a fairly consistent schedule for over 2 years now. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you don't get that all the time, but when you get more than 5 players, which I don't know if I'd ever go more than 6. I think
Yeah,
more than that.
heavy suggestion to all you DMs out there. Don't don't have that big of games. It's not great.
3 to 5 players. That's all you need. 3 to 5 players is perfect. And also, like when you have 8, 9 players, like I'll tell people, go back and watch campaign one of Critical Role and look how long a round of combat took. It takes a long time.
Yeah, it's
The
that's
player moves it faster.
yeah, as a DM, like the whole reason against having so many players is because combat takes 5 years and it already takes like 3 years in regular sessions. And more than that, when you get into like the party making a plan, it'll be 3 sessions before your plan is set if you have that many people.
Yeah, give them deadlines.
Yeah.
Make things have urgency as often as you can.
Yeah, you have to be a pro at like pushing the narrative if you have that many people. Otherwise, the characters is gonna spend 3 years in their room in their tavern, just trying to figure out where to go next.
Yeah,
Uh,
and what'll happen is they'll know when a combat's coming up. They'll spend 3 sessions planning out their perfect strategy, and in the first round, their strategy will go to shit because something they didn't plan on happens. And
yeah. although it does set up times for you as a DM to create really easy foils for them. Like if you ever just because the DM of mine that isn't you, uh this happened in a session 2 weeks ago. We had this whole plan planned out beautifully,
Perfect.
and we got foiled by the most mundane thing, and that is our two people that were going to sneak into this place to do the plan. They're a halfling and a gnome, so they could not reach the window that they were going to sneak in through.
There's your problem.
It's the simplest foil, and you should absolutely do that all the time. Uh, like definitely throw those in, even if you weren't planning on like having such a mundane thing be a problem. Throw those in; those are super fun. Uh,
Well, it's
but
like you guys ran into a trap recently where your warlock, who always has detect magic running because he
yep.
has that Eldritch Invocation, which I will say is a great Eldritch Invocation.
Oh yeah.
Always have. Go ahead and just throw some real simple pressure plate traps
Yep.
or snare traps. Like throw traps that have no magic whatsoever at a party that relies on
Mm-hmm.
the character detect magic running at all times to find magical traps. Have those magical traps too, because they'll find them and they'll be so sure they disarmed your traps.
And then there's also a mechanical trap there.
Exactly. Like have those.
It's
Have just those hair
dual
trigger.
level traps. Hitting him with the 1-2, baby.
Do it. You have to do it. And honestly, that's another thing I enjoy creating is I like creating not so much puzzles, but possible dangers of a wide variety.
Yeah.
Like I don't want it to all be the same thing, and I want my players to be surprised sometimes. But I never want it to come across like, oh, I looked at all your character sheets, figured out what you couldn't stop, and deliberately hit you with that.
Oh
That's
gods. Also, if you're a DM and you do occasionally look at your players' character sheets, which I definitely suggest that you do, uh,
always
especially in the creation of things, when you're balancing things, one, never tell your players what the DC is, and two, make sure that if you're doing something that's like a hyper specific thing, unless you have a bard or a rogue that has like stupid stats and things, make sure that there's at least two people in the party that have a chance
yeah.
to pass whatever it is. Unless you need everyone to fail it for the story, like make sure that at least two people can pass.
And,
Uh
and I'll always say, if you need your players to succeed at something for the story, or you need them all to fail at something for the story, don't let them roll.
yeah.
'Cause, the players shouldn't pick up their D20 unless you, as the DM, tells them to. They don't need to. And I say this because I think I mentioned it on here before. If you need your players to succeed at something like opening a door,
Oh, they won't.
no, they'll roll. That's when the natural ones come out. It'll happen. Like, do not ever have a challenge that you need them to overcome because the
Yeah.
dice will betray them. And then conversely, don't ever have a challenge that you need them to fail unless you've done two things. One, made the DC so high that none of them can hit it, or, and this is, I think, the better option, you make the DC so high that one of them on a natural 20 can hit it. One of them.
Hmm.
And then you come up with what that means if in that miraculous 5% chance, that one roll, nat 20, because they're going to lose their minds. They're going to be excited. And few things are more disheartening than, like, say it's a trap and the party rogue rolls that nat 20 and maybe they they had guidance on them, and they
Yeah.
rolled a 4 on that. They got the highest roll possible. They get a total of like 35. You tell them they still failed. Your players are going to be disappointed they were ever allowed to roll
Yep.
because then
They
they'll go,
100% will.
yeah,
Uh, and
that,
that's a that kind of gets into the crux of my favorite things about stuff that I've created is that like because my honestly my like crowning achievement as a DM are all these different festival events that I've put together.
sounds fun.
But all of them, the reason why I've loved putting them together and using them and balancing them so much is that because at the end of the day, none of those events and things are going to be life and death for the characters. And so like they can fail and it's not terrible. Like it'll hurt their ego and it'll spark up some more story points, but like they're not going to die in the middle of a foot race. I mean, the city may get attacked in the middle of the festival, but that's a whole different thing. And I also heavily suggest using that because I'm an anime nerd. Because that's
But that's the storytelling.
yeah. And also a thing that I have to mention when we're talking about creations because it is one that one of my friends created. My buddy Ryan, who we met in college and we played my first long running D&D game. He's an amazing DM. Like he writes up such intricate, fantastical, amazing things. Like most of it was homebrew. We were playing in 3.5, but we used some things from Pathfinder. He did a lot of creating and a lot of work. And the thing that he created that I love the most, that I have stolen a bit and ran with and created on, which also artist theft, steal. Um, but it's the creation of one particular deity, Bob, the god of dumb luck, and
Yes.
this man gave us the time to run with Bob, the god of dumb luck, just kind of knowing who he was. And then we met a priest of Bob. And then we found the word of Bob, which was basically a blank book. Um, if I still remember, it's he described this ornate tome and then this really ornate table of contents, and then we flipped to the first page and it said, "What am I supposed to tell you? Figure it out yourselves." The rest of the pages are blank. I love it so much. But I've ran
Yeah.
with Bob, the god of dumb luck, because he also the priest of Bob would occasionally just appear and disappear out of our existence.
Right.
Sometimes by just being time travel poofed because god of dumb luck, he's there for shenanigans. Sometimes turning into a
Yeah.
small furry creature and then coming back to himself eventually. Uh, but I'll use Bob as the basically that orb that you talked about earlier that I created, where if someone can't play, they get turned into a squirrel by Bob because
There
praise
you
be to
go.
Bob. He'll always Bob will always bring you back to close to where you were. Uh, but you could be a squirrel for some time.
And that's fun. Like that makes it interesting. If you have a player that can't make a stretch of sessions, find out a reason why they can't.
Mm-hmm.
Like make it part of the story. But like, again, in our campaign, at a point before any of you would have had any teleportation or extraplanar traveling ability, we had a player that was going to be gone for a few months.
Mm-hmm.
So I had somebody show up, grab a hold of them, cast plane shift, vamp the hell on out of there, and all of you were going, well, we have no idea where they went, but we're currently in the middle of a life or death situation.
Mm-hmm.
Then the dice told a great story because you all nearly died.
Yeah,
Pulled
we
up
did.
tiny hut, and then a dragon showed up. And you had no chance or real time to worry about your lost ally. It was like we'll deal with him when we have time, but right now we're all beat to hell, and there's a dragon right there.
It's we
So
can't find him if we're dead.
and and that can be a fun thing, you know. Give your players
Mm.
those opportunities, make things like that work.
It was just a thing that popped into my mind
Yeah,
that I think it will be useful to have like said and on the internet for other people to steal and use is every D&D campaign you're going to eventually find a time where your party wants to have a drinking contest.
yes, you will.
The way that I do the drinking contest and I kind of use this as a model for also for like arm wrestling, for other like skill competitions that aren't like a foot race or archery, is the base starts at 10. Each time they do a thing, the DC goes up by 2.
Mhm.
You fail the DC once and the DC goes up by 4 instead of 2. And you lose when it is impossible for you to hit the DC.
I like that. I
So
like
like
that.
it makes it very simple, especially for a drinking contest, because like even when you win that round, you're still getting drunk. And if you lose that round, there's still a chance that you could come back.
Sure. And all it takes is, you know, that barbarian who
Mm-hmm.
has plus
Oh, I
nine.
should mention that I also use nat ones as instead of a +4, a +8, which is huge, and then nat 20s. There's no DC increase for that round.
Yeah, well, that right there, that barbarian who has the +9 to their con, all they have to have is one or two bad rounds, and
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden, the wizard with low con, no bonus, who happened to roll high a few times, just might drink that barbarian under the table.
Yeah, and like that's a thing that I always like to have in my creations for contests is that there's still a chance for someone that doesn't have a good stat at the related stat to win.
Sure. Well,
Because
it makes it more interesting because
yeah,
sometimes that just happens in those challenges where you get that one person who they were just lucky that day.
hmm, sometimes you get sandbagged, or sometimes you get speedbagged. Other times you phone it in and you lose.
Yeah.
Like, and that's part of it. Like, sometimes you get beat because you were unlucky. Uh, Other noteworthy things to simple things to create in D&D campaigns. Like, what are some things that you can think of that are definitely not in the books that could use a good like creation table for.
I don't know about a creation table, but I think it's important if you think about think about your players, think about your characters. I think what these characters' goals ultimately are. Think about what they want, how they can reach that end game, and then think about the ways they can get there. I'll use our friend Phoenix's character Ramil as a quick
Hmm.
example. For you guys found out his character was from 100 years in the future, and that one of the antagonists you were facing was his brother in arms, also 100 years in the future. And all he wanted to do was redeem his brother and send him back.
Mm-hmm.
So there are no time travel rules in D&D,
Yep.
and you guys, well, more him than the rest of you, you found out from a hag that was masquerading as a moon nymph.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
She had the ability to either directly send him back or create a device. And so, for just for grins and ha-has, made these two MacGuffins, one that would require killing good metallic dragons, or one that would require killing chromatic dragons. He did a bunch of praying, rolled a 35 when talking to Paylor, and so
Mm-hmm.
then I thought, well, I guess Paylor just tell him to go talk to Tiamat. And you guys ran all over the nine hells so he could fuel this device that I just made up on a whim, where it's like this evil god would give up the souls of her children in exchange for this mighty weapon that could help her in this war to like
and
the
b-
purpose
and
of hell.
basically help us circumvent the entirety of Descent into Avernus from ever happening in our game.
You guys didn't have to go fight 5 adult dragons, which I mean, you guys are level 15. You could have taken them
Oh
if you
yeah,
wanted to find easy. All at once would have been more difficult,
yeah.
but you know, but then having this thing and then creating its own rules for how it works, like uh, for those watching, the way the device worked, it was tied to the hit points of whoever you were trying to send
Hmm.
back. There were only 2 people from this time, but it was a percentile dice roll, and what you had to do was meet or beat the percentage of hit points they had left. So if they were at 100% of their hit points, it was 100% going to fail, and the lower percentage, the higher percentage of success. And you guys very
Hmm.
carefully got this dude down to 0 hit points on a declared non-lethal hit,
Yep.
and then on a healing spell rolled a 1, so was at less than half of a percent.
Yep.
Yeah,
See,
then
my favorite thing about that is uh to throw your players for a loop when you're creating things. Use the percentile die.
it's
Like
not
use the
like
percentile dice because
they don't
they
use
they
enough.
don't get used enough.
Yeah,
And so like anytime that you can make something and it's tied to a percentage, please do it because
yeah,
it gives your players the chance to use those D10s that they're probably not using that often.
yeah. Like, percentile dice get rolled so rarely, and when players get to roll them, they'll get nervous when they pick them up because you know as a player, if you're rolling percentile dice, there is some number you can roll or something really bad happens.
Yep.
You just know that, and then also going in with it with this MacGuffin I created to allow him to send somebody back to their own time. Um, I think when you're creating those things, always create some sort of drawback with it. And in this case, the 2 drawbacks I created was Ramil himself wanted to go home 100 years in the future to his time. He also wanted to redeem and send his brother back to their time. And I made it that this device could be used 1 time ever.
Yep.
So he has to make a choice. Do I go back or do I send him back? And then also making it clear, oh, but to make this work on him, you have to beat him within an inch of his life.
Yep.
You create this drama within them, within your players, because they're going, now we're going to be fighting someone who is going to be trying to kill us, but we're not trying to kill them. And
Although
it
my
creates
favorite my favorite thing narratively with that one is that Ramil is the only one that cared about at that point. Ramil was the only one that honestly cared if he lived or died. Like all the
you
rest
guys
of
got
us could have
you would
killed the fuck out of him.
you would all come around by the end of that battle though. Like
No,
as
the straight up the only reason cuz my character was the one that ended up doing the last hit that knocked him unconscious. Uh straight up my like if we were doing a Tox Machina and someone asked about this, it'd be like Bandit honestly just didn't want to also fight Ramil after that fight.
you were pretty low on hit points at that point.
Yeah, cuz you had that cuz we evil cleric just kept healing the other person so many goddamn times.
It's another fun thing out there for you, DMs. Have villains with healing spells because
No,
nothing throws your players for a loop quite like something they're fighting getting healed.
it's so annoying.
Yeah,
I mean, do it because you'll infuriate your players, but also go fuck you.
yeah, like that. Also, never forget you can counterspell healing word.
Yep.
Never forget that. Your players will look at you like you just picked up their drink and threw it out the window. They'll just give you a look like,
Oh yeah.
"How dare you?" But it's worth it.
Yep.
Just when one of
They
them,
your players will look at you like you stomped on their puppy.
They will, because everybody uses the healing word yo-yo.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we have someone who's unconscious. They're making death saves. It's okay. Healing word. Just counterspell it. It's a level one spell. It's a level one spell. Counterspell that thing.
It's rude. It's absolutely
That's
rude and disgusting, and I love it.
it's one of my favorite things I've ever done.
Yep.
One of my favorite things I've ever done as a DM.
The last creation that I want to talk about is the character that I just this afternoon created, specifically for the special thing that we are doing on the 12th.
Yes. Oh man, it's gonna be fun.
Yep.
So
So we've got it nailed down. It's gonna be dope as all get out, but we wanted to, uh, because we're going to take Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve off because they both fall on friggin' Thursdays this year. We wanted to still do something special, and we are going to do a live one shot on Saturday the 12th. We're going to start at 5 o'clock.
5 p.m.
Yes, 5 p.m. That is what we set. Bjorn is going to be DMing.
Yeah.
And why don't you, if you have things in your mind that you can tell the people without ruining anything?
I can. So, just real briefly, it's all the players are going to be playing level one characters. So, hit points are going to be at a premium.
We're gonna
And
die.
yeah, falling damage can kill you at level one. It's great. There's a really great adventure that I've never played, but I've read it a few times and always wanted to run on the DM's Guild. It's called the Wild Sheep Chase, and it's a 3 to 4 hour adventure if you do all of it, and it's designed for higher level characters. But I found a really cool template and some really cool guides how to scale it down to the first level. Because everything I've read has said if you scale this down to first level, the hijinks that will ensue are just all the better. And you have players that know better than to take too many hits. Because if you're a barbarian at level one and you are raging, you can probably take 3 good hits and you're fine.
Yep.
If you're any other class, you can maybe take 1 good hit.
If
If
you're a
you're
wizard, you can
or an
get looked at
sorcerer,
the wrong way.
oh man. If you're a wizard with a 16 constitution, you have 9 hit points.
That's terrifying.
That's amazing. So yeah, we're gonna do Wild Sheep Chase. It'll be fun. I got a great group of players for it. They'll all be doing level one characters, and yeah, like come out and hang out with us. It'll be fun. And then our
Yeah.
plan, we're hoping to record it, and the recording works. We want to broadcast it during some of those times,
Mm.
and just maybe depending on what we're doing those days, we might hop on the chat. And
Yeah.
anybody who
I
wants to
know.
join,
I know. For New Year's, I probably won't be able to jump in the chat much more than to occasionally check it if we rebroadcast on New Year's, because I've been keeping my COVID bubble very, very tight, but that COVID bubble likes to celebrate.
sure.
So
I mean,
we'll be doing that.
if we do it at the usual time, we'll be done by 6:30.
That is true.
Yeah,
I guess it does depend on when we broadcast it. But also, that COVID bubble we would start at like 4. Maybe I can convince them. Maybe I can convince them to watch it with us.
Seriously, convince them to
Yeah.
watch it. That could be part of the free funk of it. Get your
That could be
first
fun. But
Right.
like definitely on Christmas Eve, because my immediate family that I would normally spend Christmas Eve with, even if COVID wasn't a thing, they are with other parts of our family in other parts of the country. So my Christmas Eve will be with y'all in this and the rebroadcast. But to let you know, if you want to watch it live, it will be happening live December 12th, 5 p.m. We will start. There's 5 of us in total, counting Bjorn as the DM. 2 of them you have met before as special guests. The other, who I'm keeping all of the names secret because funsies.
Cool.
But the one person that hasn't been a special guest yet is a very, very good friend of mine that I consider almost a sibling. We've done a good amount of theater together, and I love him to death. I just gave his pronouns away. But yeah, it'll be like I want you to show up just to see what he's gonna do because I have never seen him play D&D before. I've only seen him do theater. So I'm really excited about that.
It is going to be fun, and we hope to see you there, and we hope to see you back here next week.
Mm-hmm. We do. Because we're going to be doing a show next week. We we have not planned what the topic's going to be,
No,
so
no.
we'll see. But please, don't forget to follow us on Instagram, on Facebook, as well as to if this is one of your first episodes that you've watched, please go back through the catalog and look at our other episodes dating back to episode 2, because episode 1 does not exist.
If you didn't see it, you missed out. It was the best one too.
I sure it was. But as always, be good to yourselves, be good to each other.
Yeah.
We love you, and take COVID seriously because you can't watch this show if you're dead.
Yeah, and do something fun this weekend.
Truth.
Like,
Definitely do something for yourself this weekend. Especially if you also took the time and effort to like video call family and whatnot over last week, because we all know how stressful dealing with family can be sometimes. So yeah, be good to yourselves. Hey Bjorn, do you remember what the sign off was that we did like 2 weeks ago?
It was good.
Yeah, it was really good. I don't remember it. I didn't look back to see what it was.
Don't hear that. I should.
Well,
I should ask somebody else to do it for me.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna splice in the. I. You know that we're still on right now. You're moving your camera. I haven't switched over yet.
Oh, I think you switched over.
Oh no, I hadn't switched over. I haven't properly ended the show yet.
Oh, shit, hey.
Well, we should go. See you next week, everybody.
Next week.